Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Political Science 171, Comparative and International Politics. I'm Professor Compton, and I'm sitting in front of this camera, feeling a little foolish today. Nonetheless, you will be viewing this via YouTube while I am away in South Africa and in Zimbabwe. I wanted to point out a few things before we get started. This is our textbook, as you can see. It's Introduction to Politics, second edition. If you buy this online, it's a relatively inexpensive book. You will be able to save quite a bit of money. I want to point out that it is critical that you buy the book and also that you print out the readings that's in the syllabus. Most of the readings in the syllabus, they are either available online or I will send them to you, or they are links that you can click directly on the syllabus that I sent to you earlier this week. Uh, so just wanted to introduce you to the book. A couple of things I want to point out. First, in terms of if you look at the syllabus, um, this class is from 8:30 to 9:45, and my office hours are listed. My office location, which says Fitzell 514, I wish you good luck to get to Fitzell 514. You won't find it. It is gone. It is part of a $10 million project to redo Fitzell. So my office is actually in the library, in the third floor of the library, what used to be known as the Atlas Room. And I am in Milne 310E. And you'll notice that my phone number and my email is also listed. Now keep in mind that this is an introductory class, and as an introductory class, I don't expect you to have an understanding of the political world. Rather, this class is a general education class that is also a requirement for political science and international studies majors. So, another point I wanted to make in regards to the readings is that the exams, as you may know by looking at the syllabus, are open book, open notes. That doesn't mean that it's an easy class. Now let me tell you that approximately, in terms of A's, we have about 10 to 15% A's in a class of about this size. And although it is difficult to get an E, and E, as you know, doesn't stand for excellence, it should be an F, which is failure, rather than fantastic, but it is very difficult to get an E. The majority of the grades are in the B and the C range, with the plurality of the grades being in the C range. So I wanted to point that out. So if your objective is to maximize GPA, you may not want to be in this class. Now, maximizing GPA. Well, one of the things you'll learn in this class is that maximization of GPA is similar to what we call utility maximization, which is utilitarianism, which is discussed in detail in the first few chapters of the book, incidentally. So I'll leave that up to you. Now, the syllabus actually has an outline, right, and of all the readings as they are scheduled. So your objective is to keep up with the syllabus, follow through with it, do the readings ahead of class, pay attention, take notes, try to sit up front, and if you sit in the back, try to be engaged. Don't text away. Definitely don't sleep in class, because as you know, you can always get better sleep in your dorm room or at home rather than in the classroom. Okay, let's see. So I think that covers it. Definitely take a look at the syllabus. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Now for the next 4 days, what I want you to do is I want you to sign in on an attendance sheet. And there are tasks that are noted. At this time, I think I ought to introduce you to Laura Goldstein, who is the teaching assistant for this class. In addition to that, Sean Dacey, Mr. Sean Dacey, has agreed to help out during my absence. So today what I'd like to do is have you, one, watch this clip in class, and then after that have a discussion with Laura about what it is that the political scientists do, what is politics, how do you define it in your own words, and where do you see it, the manifestation of politics in your life, and is it possible to come to the truth, you know? Those of you who are familiar with X-Files, the whole idea behind X-Files is that the truth was out there. And my question to you is, are political scientists capable of discovering this thing called the truth? Okay, general background. Yes, I should give you a little bit of a background about me. Some of you may have originally thought that you were in the wrong class. Why? If you look at me, my face doesn't quite match my name. Well, that's because my name is, well, my father's American and my mother is Japanese. And I grew up in Okinawa, Japan, also in Tokyo, Japan, and I speak Japanese fluently in addition to English. Um, so that's why I look the way that I do. Um, okay, I'm trained as a political scientist, graduated from Binghamton University in 1997, taught at Western Kentucky University, the Hilltoppers, those of you who are into basketball, before I came to Oneonta in 2001. Currently, I am associate professor. For those of you who don't know, we start out with assistant professor, then there's associate professor, then there's full professor. Of course, there's distinguished professor, but there are only about 2 or 3 on this campus. And that designation comes directly from the chancellor. And currently, so I'm associate professor of Africana Latino Studies and Political Science. I also happen to be chair of the Africana and Latino Studies department. Um, when I originally started out in political science, my primary interest was in East Asian politics, in particular democratization, focusing on, voila, Japan, no surprise there, South Korea, and Thailand. And East Asian democratization was the title of my first book. I have 3 books to my name, as well as articles, several articles, and edited chapters. Now, we say that we all wear many hats. In addition to being a political scientist, I also do some consulting for Center for International Development, in particular in the areas of legislative strengthening and setting up internships dealing with the parliament. And I've done consulting work in Zimbabwe and also in Uganda. So you're probably wondering, why is it that I started out in dealing with East Asian countries and then gravitated towards Africa? Well, as you know, Japan is not in very good shape economically speaking, and the attention has focused to China. Unfortunately, if you don't speak Chinese, you can never be a China specialist. I don't speak Chinese, so I didn't want to fake it. Now, the other reason why I got interested in African politics is not only because Africa as a continent, 54 countries, quite fascinating in terms of the field where politics is conducted, but also because it's inexpensive. Yes, it's cheap. It may be expensive to get there, but once you get there, it's relatively inexpensive. Whereas in the case of Japan, it's very expensive. Um, and it has become increasingly expensive over the past 30 years. On this campus, I wear many hats in addition to being the chair of Africana Latino Studies. I also, in the past, have been the director of the Model UN program, and then I started a Model SADC program. That's Southern African Development Community and Parliamentary Forum, so SADC PF. And that was in conjunction with the New York State African Studies Association. In addition to that, I am also vice president of our union, vice president for academics. My shirt says UUP, United University Professions. And we represent over 35,000 professors, full and part-time, as well as professionals such as those in the admissions office, financial aid office, um, and even librarians, who are actually incidentally considered to be faculty. Okay, now what I'd like to do is to move to the introduction of the book, in particular focusing on not chapter 1, but the few pages before that, titled Introduction. Oh, tell you a story. How did I become interested in political science? Well, at the risk of really being nerdish, so to speak, um, when I was 7 years old, I became interested in collecting stamps, and we call that philately. And you'd see all these pictures of different people, different places, right? And you see pictures of, you know, Stalin or pictures of John F. Kennedy, and I became very curious about the why is it that these people or these places or these religions are depicted on the postage stamps. So during fourth grade, I spent the entire summer reading from A to Z every single article in the encyclopedia that pertained to the social sciences and humanities. And of course, the encyclopedia was Compton's encyclopedia. And my father wanted to demonstrate to me that my name actually had some value. But anyway, enough of that nonsense. Let's see, the book defines politics as what? Well, politics has many definitions, by the way, but the most common definition is a definition by Harold Lasswell, and it's who gets what, when, and how. I want you to think about that for a minute. When we say who gets what, it doesn't necessarily have to be money. For example, the what can actually be a law. It can be also symbolic in the sense of recognition, right? Things don't happen by accident. That's the emphasis of when. Usually there's some kind of a political motivation behind what you get when you get it. And how do you get it is also important. And when we think about politics, we frequently think about conflict. But it doesn't always have to be conflict, because the flip side of conflict is cooperation. And usually, cooperation and conflict go hand in hand, in the sense that both are taking place in many political systems throughout the world. And that brings us to our next point, which is political systems. And when we talk about political systems, what are we talking about here? Well, political systems, the meaning behind that, you want to think about a system. System has parts or components. So, for example, the legislature, right? That's a part of the political system. The judiciary, the executive. Wow, the three branches of government. Political parties, and what the book refers to as civil society. We're talking about different interest groups that are out there. In the United States, you're familiar with groups like the Chamber of Commerce, the National Rifle Association, Handgun Control Inc., Sierra Club. Those are all interest groups, right, and part of what we call civil society. National Organization of Women is another one. PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And these are all part of the political system. By the way, don't forget corporations. They too are part of the political system. So, I want to talk a little bit about how we learn about what politics is. How do we learn about politics? The book mentions two ways that you can do this. One is what the book calls inductive reasoning. The other is deductive reasoning. Well, I'm not so sure how valuable that distinction really is, but let me proceed to explain anyway. When we talk about something as being inductive. Right? That means that you have a general idea about how things ought to be, and you make certain assumptions about the political world. For example, the book refers to rational choice. We assume that people can calculate and have information to be able to calculate what is in their best interest. Sort of like a cost-benefit analysis. You weigh the costs, the benefits, and if the benefits exceed the cost, then you do that. Right? If it doesn't, then you refrain from a certain activity. So for example, you decide after this class, geez, I think I'm going to go and get something to drink. Well, I think I'm going to get plastered, you say. Then you got to do a cost-benefit analysis. Well, what will happen to my brain cells? How much will it cost me? How much joy would I really derive? Do I want to be passed out in a bathtub the next day? And you may say, I don't think so. I do a cost-benefit analysis in my mind, and the costs outweigh the benefits. Therefore, I will not go out to drink and get plastered. Okay, that is a rational choice approach where you're making that kind of cost-benefit analysis. Right? And that is based on induction. Now, deduction. Deduction is you examine cases. These cases could be in a narrative form, or they may be in the form of statistics, such as the number of people who died in World War I, number of people who died in World War II, etc. Right? And from that information, and you analyze that information, you come up with ideas about how the world operates. Well, well, that's fine, you might say. But the article, the link, in the syllabus, that dealt with political science and the National Science Foundation funding for political science as being imperiled, is an interesting article, a short little contemporary piece, that the beef about political scientists, and the book also mentions this, is that it hasn't really made progress like a science. Right? We call it political science. But where's the science, they ask? You test hypotheses and you try to build theory, but the theories don't seem to explain a lot. Right? So, for example, you're familiar with what we call the hard sciences, right? Physics, chemistry, biology, right? Versus the social sciences, sometimes even called the soft sciences, like political science and sociology. I argue that actually political science and sociology is in fact the hard science because there's so many variables. And you're talking about human behavior. Human behavior is extremely difficult to predict. And especially because our we don't use petri dishes, right? We don't use a microscope. We don't have a laboratory per se. The entire world is our laboratory. So things are constantly changing like this. And because they're changing so rapidly, I argue that it's extremely difficult to predict. So some people have come to the conclusion that political science, in fact, is useless. Well, I'll let you debate that briefly with Laura, and we will end the lesson for today. And thank you very much. And if you have any questions, definitely email me.